When I think of Mazda, I picture beautifully styled vehicles that are more fun to drive than other cars or SUVs. Unfortunately, I'm also reminded of its less practical and efficient side. But part of that is addressed with this, the 2025 Mazda CX-50 Hybrid. Before we jump into this review, do us a favor, hit those like and subscribe buttons below to get all of our latest content. The Mazda CX-50 was already one of the best choices in the compact SUV class, despite having lower fuel economy figures and less passenger and cargo space than the competition. For drivers that value performance and handling, those were acceptable trade-offs for the CX-50's agility. This new hybrid model debuts a 2.5-liter four-cylinder that pairs with 3 electric motors delivering 219 horsepower, 163 pound-feet of torque, and all-wheel drive. Now, if those specs sound familiar, it's because it's right out of the Toyota RAV4 Hybrid. That's a smart move if you ask me, since Toyota's been in the hybrid game longer than most car makers. Also, I haven't been that impressed by the hybrid CX-90 or CX-70 variants since I've experienced some odd inconsistencies with the way they drive. This new hybrid fits right between the CX-50's existing engine choices, with the base model making 187 horsepower and the top turbo trim producing 256 horsepower. As far as styling goes, I think the CX-50 and the same size CX-5 are some of the best looking in the class. The CX-50 adds a bit more brawn with the wider grille and these flared fenders, giving it a more athletic stance. Of course, style is subjective, so what do you think? Do you agree with my assessment, or is there another compact SUV that you think wins the beauty contest? Let us know in the comments below. Well, I've droned on long enough, so let's hop in and see how this new hybrid drives. From behind the wheel, this CX-50, well, it feels like a Mazda. That's a good thing. It also feels like a RAV4 Hybrid, which is also a good thing. The hybrid powertrain is nice and smooth. You don't feel a lot of the transitions between battery and internal combustion. And that's true whether you're accelerating or slowing down. As far as acceleration goes, well, it's nice and smooth and pretty responsive. It's not a big punch of power or anything, but it gets you up to speed just fine. It should hit 60 miles an hour, somewhere between 7.5 and 8 seconds, which is about average for the class. That said though, it's not as sharp, it's not as responsive as I'm used to from a Mazda powertrain. So in that case, it sort of makes sense for me to want maybe the RAV4 Prime plug-in hybrid powertrain in here, which has 302 horsepower, and up until the Supra came along, it was the fastest accelerating Toyota. To me, that makes a little more sense, but price-wise, it might push it into an uncomfortable territory and might add a little bit too much weight. This particular hybrid only weighs about 267 pounds more than the base engine, so you really won't feel that dynamically. As far as comfort goes, it rides just a little stiffer than most other SUVs in the class, but the payoff to that is sharp handling. Yeah. It's way more fun to drive than a RAV4 or CR-V, or even the Kia Sportage. It's simply the driver's choice in the class. And going back to comfort, there is a little more noticeable road noise than you'd get from other vehicles in the class too, but it's not that much of a problem. And honestly, just turn up the radio a little bit, you'll never hear it again. All things considered, this is my choice within the compact SUV class. I don't need the space, but I really do want the performance. But that's only part of the equation, so let's pull over and talk about the interior. I typically rank Mazda's interiors higher than almost any other in its class. To me, it's up there with luxury brands like Acura and Lexus. That's because you've got nicer materials. Almost everything is soft touch, and where you do have harder plastics, it's sturdier and a little more refined. Design-wise, it's also cleaner, a little more sophisticated, with little touches here and there, like this neat cross-stitching here on the dash. One thing that's exclusive to this new hybrid is this red leather upholstery, which I think really livens up the interior. There is one thing that's a little strange about the seats though. You have this center stripe going down, and for me it's just hitting a really weird, uncomfortable spot in my body. Now, to put it delicately, it feels like there's a letter in my mail slot. So yeah, if you have an option to skip these seats, I suggest you do that. Switching over to technology, well, I actually like Mazda's infotainment system. It's a little behind the times, but I like it because it's easy to use. It has this dial controller, and the screen is set right in my sight lines. Now, there is one thing that's weird, and that's come to all Mazdas, and it's the touch screen. That sort of works and sort of doesn't. Depends on how you're using the system. When you're using Mazda's built-in system, it's not a touch screen. But if you switch over to Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, it allows for touchscreen use. That said, I tend to use the dial more because it just moves it to the next spot, leaves it there, so you can just hit tap when you want to. You don't have to pay as much attention to it as you're driving with your finger trying to point out each little button on the screen. But what do you think? Are you like me and like the old school dial, or do you prefer a bigger touchscreen that kind of handles everything? And that leads me to the climate controls. I like that they're old school and physical with buttons and knobs, because I can just reach down and adjust the temperature as I'm driving. It's a no-look proposition. It's kind of great. I kind of wish that some manufacturers would go back to that model, just because it's really distracting to do some of the most basic functions if everything's on a touch screen. Now, when it comes to interior storage, you have moderately sized cup holders and a nice deep center armrest bin. The door pockets are about medium-sized or so. Here we have a rubberized tray for my phone, and it does a pretty good job of keeping it secure. And I actually thought it was a wireless charging pad at first, but it's actually back here towards the back of the center console. Now, I'm really happy that they added a wireless charging pad, especially since you have wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. But the problem is, it doesn't seem to be able to charge my max-sized iPhone. So, unfortunately, I'm still going to have to use a cable. Now, I do have ventilated seats, which is nice on a warm day like today. But that's all up here. Let's check out the back seats next. Here in the back seats, I have an adequate amount of room. I'm 5'10", sitting behind the driver's seat, which is set for me, and I've got a little bit of headroom and a little bit of knee room left. Now, it's important to point out here that competitors in the class do offer a lot more space back here, and that's especially important if you have kids and an infant seat. But, as you can see for me, it should be just fine. Now back here, materials quality isn't quite as nice as it is up front, and that's more for durability if you have kids back here. I have some air vents and 2 USB-C charge ports. Here in the center armrest, 2 moderately sized cup holders. Now, sitting back here, it feels nice and airy, thanks to this really big panoramic sunroof. And the windows here, well, they give you a good outward view, and this roof pillar here doesn't close you in. Overall, it's a nice place to spend some time, but like I said, you'll get more space from rivals. Another area where the CX-50 comes up a little short is cargo space. Now, when you look at this space, I think that'll do fine for me, but I don't have kids, I don't have to deal with strollers and stuff. So you can fit 29.2 cubic feet of cargo back here. That's a little bit less, maybe 2 cubic feet smaller than the regular non-hybrid, mostly because of the batteries underneath. Now, the problem is when you compare it to others in the class that get almost 40 cubic feet. So that's a really big difference, and something you really need to pay attention to if you really do need that utility. Now, helping things back here are remote seat back releases, so you don't have to go crawling through the back door. Also in this trim, you get a power lift gate. So all in all, yeah, it comes up short for utility, but for some people, like myself, it should be just fine. As with most other Mazda vehicles, this CX-50 stands out from the rest of the class with its peppy performance. That's enough to recommend it to a driver like myself who prioritizes fun behind the wheel. But I know that most shoppers need more practicality in the form of passenger space and cargo space. For those pragmatic shoppers, they'd be better served by the Honda CR-V, Kia Sportage, or Toyota RAV4. Now the question is if the hybrid makes sense within the CX-50 lineup. In general, you'll have to spend between $2,000 and $2,500 to step up from the base engine to the hybrid. The hybrid is estimated to return 38 mpg in combined city and highway miles compared to the standard engine's 28 mpg. With gas arbitrarily set at $4 a gallon and allowing for 15,000 miles per year, you'll save $620 in fuel. That means it'll take about 4 years to make up the hybrid price premium, making it a smart choice for most shoppers. Compared to other hybrids in the class, the CX-50 is right up there. The Honda CR-V Hybrid costs $1,000 or $2,000 more than the Mazda and is estimated at 37 mpg. There is a front drive model that should return 40 mpg though. The Kia Sportage Hybrid is rated at 38 mpg for the all-wheel drive model and 43 mpg for the front drive model. Not surprisingly, the RAV4 Hybrid is almost identical to the CX-50 at 39 mpg. So what would you do in this situation? Are you like me and willing to give up some practicality for some fun? Or do your obligations have you looking at more convenient alternatives? Would you go for the CX-50 Hybrid or maybe stick with the conventional engines? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and make sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons to get our next review.